At the age of 18, I was faced with a dilemma because I did know that the knowledge that I could learn in school was important to me. I had an offer on the table for one of the most prestigious universities in my country. What I had the chance to do was to go get one of those pieces of paper that makes my parents feel like they did a good job. But I didn't want to go. I remember saying to my mom, I said, "Mom, how would you feel if I didn't take this university option, and what I did is I got a job in the field, the kind of job you could get if you had a good degree without the degree? Would that make you proud?" I was told it couldn't be done. Yet 3 weeks later, I proved her wrong. See, at the age of 18, I became the youngest ever sales manager for a business called Debenhams Department Stores. And there's a beautiful thing about being in a senior leadership position at the age of 18. Because at 18 years old, you do not know what you do not know. When it comes to learning how to get success, what I would do is I'd look around to the people who were doing good things around me. I'd ask them how they did it, and I'd just do that. Yet bosses were mesmerized at my results because everywhere we went, we put growth on last year, growth on last year, growth on last year. They'd say, "Phil, you're crushing it. How do you do it?" I said, "It's pretty straightforward, really. We do the basics to a high standard consistently." They then said, "Is there anything else?" I said, "Well, not really." But not everybody around you is often working for you. I wanted to share a key piece of information. You see, that image you see up there on the screen is a photograph. The one that's in the bubble is a photograph of a picture that used to live on my wall as a 15, 16, 17-year-old child in my bedroom. That picture that you see there right now is also the view that I see from my house that I now live in, which is kind of interesting. But I remember a key point in my life where I was around 21 years of age. I was sat around a dining room table with a group of people who supposedly cared about me and had my best interest at heart. And I shared my plans and my vision for the future, for what I wanted to go and do and build for my life. And when I shared with excitement and anticipation the kind of life that I was looking to go on to be able to build, here's what was said back to me. What was said back to me was, "Wow, Phil, you're such a dreamer. Like it's a bad thing." What I learned from that is that what we often have to be able to do if we're going on a quest in a direction that is different to perhaps some of the people, we are faced with two choices. The choices are this. One is we change the people, right? Two is we change the people. Take both definitions of that phrase and understand that that's quite often what we have to do when we go through processes of change. Either the people around us need to change to be able to support the direction that we're going, or we need to change the people that we're surrounded with. Here's what I see happen in the hundreds of conferences that I attend year in, year out. They know that they need to dream big, they need to achieve at the highest levels, and quite often the best of the best of the best in any industry find themselves up on stage. Have you ever been to a conference where some of those people get put up on stage, given awards and accolades? Has that ever been true? And you see those people come up on stage and they develop like a new walk. You know the walk? It's like a peacock walk. It's like, they don't walk in this way in any other area of their life, but when they come up on stage to receive an accolade, they develop this little strut. And I quite often get to meet those people. Quite often what happens is I get invited into like a private luncheon, or I get to be able to sit with these people in a unique Q&A afterwards in the event when I speak. And every time I find myself in one of those sets of circumstances, I ask the same question to this audience full of people. I say, "So how does it feel then to be in the just above average club?" They said, "No, that's not what it's called. We are team elite." I said, "No, I've looked at the statistics for exactly what it would take for you to be in this club, and you, my friends, are performing just above average." I said, "I'd like you to picture it this way, maybe a slightly different set of contexts, a slightly different scenario. I'd like you to imagine it that say you'd just been out on a romantic meal with a loved one. And the romantic meal with a loved one went particularly well. It went so well, it resulted in them coming back to your home. Not just to your home, but a room in your home. The room in question is your bedroom. Following which is a night of wild, passionate lovemaking. And then a question is asked. The question that is asked is, how was it for you, dear? And the response comes as, just above average. How happy and content would you be with a description of your performance in that environment? And if less than satisfied there, why are we so satisfied in this environment here right now if your results are performing just above average? How many times have you looked at what you're delivering, compared yourself to other people in this room and said, yeah, I'm trending just above average? If you do nothing else based on what I share with you here today, please do one thing for me and raise the bar. How much of your time do you have with your eyes on the competition? How many times do you go to bed at night thinking, what are they up to? What are they doing? What can I learn from those people? And what you do is you spend so much of your energy at that. Yet the best of the best of the best of the best has no care or consequence for his competition. Isn't that interesting? See, if you want to step out into this marketplace and you want to be able to navigate this next season of change that you're going to be going through, I wonder where you should be looking for clues. And I think the next chapter of this industry is yours to write, should you choose to take that responsibility. Where's the finish line for success in your business right now? See, where do you celebrate your win on a daily basis? Show of hands in this room who's ever celebrated the win when they secured a listing. Is that the finish line that matters most to the customer? Well, why are you celebrating when they're not? Isn't that interesting? I want to take this out of context. Let's take it left of field for a second. Can you all imagine that you own a wedding dress shop? You own a wedding dress shop. That is what I'm asking you to be able to imagine. Can we imagine that, yes or no? If you own a wedding dress shop, when do you think a wedding dress shop celebrates the success of a transaction in their business? When she says yes to the dress, right? That's the moment when she says yes to the dress. Cha-ching, we made a sale today, good news. Did that day matter to the bride? Was it the most important day to the bride? Show of hands in this room right now who's worn a wedding dress. This is interesting. For those of you that have worn a wedding dress, was the day that you purchased the dress the most important day, yes or no? All the fittings that happened in between needed to be important days too, though, right? But they didn't matter that much. The day that mattered most was the... See, you think that is true, that is also a lie. The honeymoon. There is a moment in time, Jay's all about the honeymoon, right? All about the honeymoon. I'm going to test this theory for a second. For those of you that wore a wedding dress, how much did you get a chance to be able to enjoy yourself on the day of your wedding, and how much of that day just went by in a blur and the craziness of all of the emotions that are attached towards that day? So the dress had to perform on that day, but you never got to enjoy the dress as much as you would have liked on that day. When did you get to enjoy the dress? When you saw yourself in the dress, in the encapsulated moment in time that stays on for a chapter after that moment. What difference would it make in communication if the wedding dress shop knew that that was the most important day to the consumer? How would it change how they communicate? How would it change how they would set their stall out? How would it change how they would go about doing their business? See, that's what an expert would do. They would understand that the finish line is in a different place to even where the consumer understands the finish line is. What happens if you move your finish line? What happens if you decide that your promise to your customers is not where they think it is right now? It's way past that fact, and you do that work instead. How does that set you apart? If I ask a room full of people whether they want to do good at something, whether they want to do better at something, or they want to do their best at something, what do most people pick? They want to pick the best. That is a stupid belief. Here's why. Have you ever proclaimed the words to somebody, I was trying my best, and known it was a pack of lies? Have you ever even maybe giving it as sympathy towards somebody else and said, don't worry, you were trying your best? And again, known that there was no truth in that. They all had more to give. I saw Seth Godin do an exercise once, and I'd like you to be able to do it right now for me. Guys, do me a favor, raise your hand as high as you can. And now please raise it a little higher. Right? Why didn't you believe me the first time? See, we all have more to give if we focus on the avenue of better. That's where we need to be able to put our line. You know all of your competition right now, the people that you're worried about, do you know why they exist? They exist because you exist. Their entire value proposition is based on versus you. We are better than a realtor because we're cheaper. We're better than a realtor because we have more reach. We're better than a realtor because we're kinder. We're better because a realtor because our systems are more improved. They are not winning because they are better at taking care of clients. They're winning because they're telling a better story. If you can do the work to be able to then realign what your story might do, you might be able to get to change things. Here's something we end up doing when we come to conferences like this. We look for a thing called best practice. We're looking for what's the best practice to do X, Y, and Z. I want to throw out that idea and help you understand there are no best practices to anything. The only thing that we have permission to be able to run towards is what is a better practice than what we are doing right now. We're going through perpetual amounts of change, yes? There's been a significant amount of change that this industry has gone through since I've known it. There's a huge amount of change that's in our future. Show of hands in this room who likes change. You're lying. Nobody likes change. I'm going to prove it again, and even if any of you have seen me do this before, I'm doing it again right now because the point is crystal. Do me a favor, fold your arms. Not that way, the other way. It is freaking weird. Yes? That feels uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. When changes come in, I'd like you to understand that you have three choices when a change comes. If you view a change as nothing more than a tidal wave can do three things. Thing number one is it can wash straight over you, leaving you as a drowned rat on the floor. There is thing number one. Thing number two is you can pull out a surfboard, have a boatload of fun. Thing number three is you can use the power of that tidal wave to fuel the next chapter of your existence. I cannot stop the fact that a tidal wave is coming. I can empower you to make a decision to say, are you going to let it wash over you? You going to let it fuel the next chapter of your reinvention? Or are you going to maybe just pull out a surfboard and have some fun? My advice would be create a combo with the final two, but don't let the first one happen to you. For an example of understanding what happens when a change enters an industry, I'm going to use an example that you've all heard 1,000 times before, and I'm going to talk about the example of Uber. Uber disrupted an industry massively, yes? And they really made a dent. Here's what they didn't invent. They didn't invent traveling by motor car. They didn't even invent traveling in the back of the motor car. They didn't even invent traveling in the back of the motor car with somebody else drive you who's being paid to do so. All of that stuff existed. What did they look at? They looked at a process that sucked. Does anybody remember ordering a minicab? Let's see if the process, if my experience is anything like yours. So you need to get to the airport tomorrow morning. You need to be there for 9 a.m. So what you do is you call today to book the minicab. It's going to take you about an hour to get there, so you ask it to be with you at 8 a.m. Reasonable conversation happens, minicab is booked. 8:02 a.m. the next morning, where's the minicab? It's not there, right? So you're making a phone call through, and what do they say? What do they say? It's on its way. They say it's on its way. What do they then say next? Well, 8:17, it clearly wasn't round the corner, was it? Finally it arrives, you get into the car after putting your own bag in the trunk. You get into the car and the driver says what? Where are you going? I'm like, I told you this yesterday. But you politely tell them anyway, right? And then they say, which route do you want to take to get there? And you're like, that's your job. But anyhow, you still navigate them to be able to get there. Finally, you get to the destination, correct? Running a little later than anticipated. They say that's $37.42. So you hand them your credit card and they say, cash only. So you rummage around in your bag, finding the only cash you could find. You hand them a $50 bill and they say, no change. So Uber show up, create a process that is slightly more efficient for the consumer than that. And what do the minicab companies do? They say, it's not fair. It's just not fair. And how well did that work out for them? Didn't work out too good, did it? They stomped their feet. They tried to push through legislation. They said every version of it's not fair, yet still, who won? The consumer won. not Uber. The consumer decides what level of service they're looking for, not the company. The consumer decides. And Uber won because they put the consumer first.